All right, welcome back to ConcreteWorks 2024. Excited to sit here with the man, the myth, the legend, Dustin Ox Heiland. Thank you for being here, brother.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Does anybody call you Ox anymore?
No, that I think left me when I first left college and went to Washington, D.C.
I still refer to him as Ox. He'll always be Ox. Like it's still weird to me to hear people call him Dustin. It's like Ox, Smithville, Flounder, all of our old cronies from back in the AGR days. Like the nicknames just stuck. Like I don't know anybody as anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, I still go. We were just out on a fishing trip with those guys, and yeah, the nicknames are still alive and well for sure.
That's awesome. So for those that don't know, Dustin and Joey and I, we all went to school together. We were in the same fraternity together, and that was almost 20 years ago now that we did all that.
A different life. I've known Charlie Sowers since the spring of 2004. So yeah, 20 years exactly.
20 years. And it's interesting. I go back and I think about the Dustin Heiland I knew in college. It was just this fun, like, guy who always was like down for a good time. And now I have the Dustin Heiland 20 years later, who's freaking a big shot at Concrete Supply Company, and you're the man. So what's that change been like for you growing through this industry?
Oh man, growing up's never easy or fun, but here we are. Like you do it, and the industry has been great to me. I know that for sure. It's definitely helped mold me and make me more responsible, and because there's a lot of responsibility with what we're doing and in ready mix concrete and construction in general. Just, sometimes you don't think about it, but sometimes lives can be on the line if your concrete isn't quality and you're not doing things by best practices.
Well, we were just going over some of the ACI codes and like your knowledge of the different codes and the different things to look for, and then your way of critically thinking through some of these problems. I was really impressed just a minute ago. I was like, dang, this, and I was thinking back to the Ox I knew from college. It was just like the funnest guy in the world, and here you are freaking running the world, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, you got to know what you do, right? You got to be an expert in your, like, what is it, the old saying, master, jack of all trades, but a master of one is how I've always heard it. And so master that one thing and be the best at it that you can, and know it backwards and forwards, and in that way.
What's your role right now at Concrete Supply? What do you do?
So my title is quality manager and I'm in the Charlotte area for Concrete Supply, which is our larger market. We're doing about 1 million cubic yards a year in that market from out of about 20 concrete plants.
Wow, 1 million yards in Charlotte.
Yeah, that's
pretty good.
Yeah. Last year, I mean, there's been a little bit slowdown this year. Elections kind of do that to any industry, but in the last few years, we were building maybe 3 or 4 high rises at a time.
Wow.
And now we're kind of focused. These industries go through phases. Now we're doing the infrastructure projects, water treatment plants a lot of smaller multifamily still. A lot of people still moving to Charlotte. I personally moved there in 21, kind of as COVID was ending, and a lot of people had left New York City, New Jersey, and moved down the coast to Charlotte. And so that explosion of people, the city's still catching up and figuring all that out.
There's so many places that have a shortage of single family housing. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, Charlotte's definitely one of them. And then, Charlotte finally passed a city plan, the 2040 city plan right after I got there. And it really refocused on changing some of those codes, those building codes, so that you could build like multifamily in a suburb that was traditionally single family houses only, to help aid in that explosion of people, so they could get more houses for people.
It's interesting you say that. They just changed the code in my brother's town. He lives in York, Pennsylvania, which is south central Pennsylvania. And they just changed that code there. The whole town was up in arms, actually.
Some people are certainly upset. They're like, I don't want a townhome unit going up next to me. Yeah. However, when you're tight on space, it's not like Dallas, Texas, where I lived for years, and there's all this infrastructure in roads and tollways that can get people, across the city efficiently. Charlotte is still it's a very old city, and so it's hard to expand the roadways and the interstates efficiently and effectively. So it almost becomes like in Austin, where you get that congestion. And so people don't want to live on the outskirts of town if they're working in the city. So it's hard to, how do you solve that?
Well, that's interesting. You came from Texas. What were you doing out there?
So originally I was with U.S. Concrete, which has now been acquired by Vulcan recently. I believe that was a year or two ago now. I was there. I started out as just as anybody in the field, testing mixes, testing trucks, learning the business. Worked my way up to running our lab there in the Dallas area, doing the gradations, the mix designs in the lab. And then the Toyota One project came, and my company gave me an opportunity to become the first project manager at that company. Just they needed someone. Sales can't be on a job 24/7. They needed someone. It was 150,000 yards. We did it in 12 months.
Wow.
So they needed someone out there that could liaison between sales and operations and quality control to work with, take the customers to breakfast or lunch, bring the drivers biscuits like a sales guy would do, make sure the drivers aren't spending an hour at the washout rack or the washout pits and getting back to the plant, sometimes they're running 2 pumps at a time, making sure they're going to the right pump, and then working with the third party lab on site to make sure they're taking and testing concrete and being able to fix mixes, so that way our field techs could stay at the plants and make sure they're sending me a good quality product.
Man, talk about growing up on the job.
Yeah.
Man,
I asked. They gave me the position, and I'm like, so what's the position gonna do? And they're like, yeah, you're gonna come back and tell me. Well, thank you for the clarity, Mr. Boss Man. I will go figure this out, I guess.
That's awesome, dude. That's a good story. I like that.
Was that your first job out of college? Where'd you go for that?
So I did start with U.S. Concrete right out of college. However, I actually started in the D.C. area.
Oh, okay.
With the on-site division ran by Mandy Shepard and Roberta Talavera at the time, and Steve Youngerman, and they were running the D.C. City Center project with a sister company called Superior.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a really cool project. 7 tower cranes, large underground excavation, pouring parking decks.
Yeah.
And just kind of getting my feet wet, learning, testing concrete mixes, making sure stuff was right on site, making some cylinders, making sure they get over to the sister lab to get broken and such. But I was only there for about 3 months, and then, they couldn't get interns in Oklahoma for this Chisholm View wind farm project. So they're like, do you mind? I was like, no, I'll go out there, go work for a month out in the middle of Hunter, Oklahoma, which is in between Enid, Oklahoma and Ponca City. Both.
You're still naming cities nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I was out there for about a month, and then they're like, hey, you don't seem to mind being on the road. We got a levee pumping station project in New Orleans that we're finishing up, and the guy out there is really needing some help. So by this point, I've learned how to kind of batch concrete, test concrete, just the basics. I've been doing it for 6 months at this point, and so I go out there, and I was out in New Orleans for another 6 or 7 months, just batching concrete. That was a really interesting project because by that point, the job site was actually down the intercoastal, and the main structure was done. They were just pouring like the large bollards and such, and so everything had to get loaded onto a barge and then be barged downriver and placed. And so we'd have a couple big pours a week, and I was there until the plant shut down. And then on site didn't have enough work to keep me staffed, but they didn't want to lose me, so they transferred me out to Dallas, Texas. Of course, I got to Dallas, and they immediately sent me back to Oklahoma to run a portable project for another 8 months. So,
dude, life on a portable site is rough.
Oh yeah.
Oh man. I mean, it's kind of nice because I tell people portable work can be some of the easiest work because you get your material set. You can't have this vast variation in material sets. You get what's there.
It's just for the project. It's just the materials for the project. It's not like a regular ready mix plant.
Right, where I have like 5,000 mix designs for my concrete plants right now.
But when I'm on these sites, not only is it crazy hours because you got the concrete guys for whatever reason that you have to be out of the way of everyone else. They're instead of people making way for us, we got to be out of their way. So we're pouring at midnight, 2 a.m. every time.
Mm-hmm.
But what was I don't remember any portable site I was ever on that the plant worked exactly how the plant is supposed to work. And there's nobody to call. Like you climb up there and you start banging on it with a hammer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was lucky. We had a sister company called Atlas Tuck at the time, and just down the road. So they'd send me drivers every day, and then they had a maintenance guy on staff. So if
you were blessed,
I was blessed.
I'll tell you that.
I mean, it did take a good 2 or 3 months before they set these portable plants up so quick.
Yeah,
the guy setting it up sets it up in like
you can set one up in a week. Probably.
Yeah, well, they set it up in 3 days and then wait for the maintenance guy to come back and your gates aren't weighing up right, or your powders aren't. And then, it's because they didn't tighten down that MAC valve or that Schroeder valve that, like, came loose in transit, because they're not checking every connection. So it takes a few months, but once you get your mixes, you have 5 mix designs and you get them dialed in, and you just know. And then you're only working with one customer, so it's just like, when do you want to pour? You know, what kind of rate are we doing? Okay, so you just hammer them or go slow. So it gets easier over time, but about the time you figure it out, you're wrapping up and you're going on to the next one.
No, it balances out for sure. Because I remember, the old job with all the airfield paving and stuff that we were doing. When you were busy, like you were busy, like you were doing those 14, 16, however long, however long hour days. But on the slow days, you're like stocking material, you're playing in the loader, you're racking up sand all day or for a couple days, and then you're working on the plant, and it balances out for sure.
Yeah, I certainly remember the end of that project where, like, we're getting down to doing like sidewalks and stuff, and so they need like 40 yards of sidewalk, like 10 yards every 2 hours or something, right?
Yep.
And so, like, they'd send me 2 drivers, so I'd get in the batch house, load the first truck, the other driver come in, we start watching a movie. I'd be like, the first driver get back, that other driver go catch a load, he'd come in, watch movies with me. So you're just kind of like, well, that's the job. I can't leave. I can't do anything. There's nothing else. Inventory's done. Paperwork's done.
Yeah, that's great.
Wait for the guy to call for another load.
That's right. Just sit there till somebody tells you what to do.
Yeah.
Well, how's this ConcreteWorks been treating you? You been having a good time with this show?
Oh, this show's been great. It's been one of the bigger shows. Obviously, with COVID, they started getting smaller, and it's taken a little while to rebound. However, I mean, the expo hall's been great. Seems like there's a lot of people here. I just heard there's another record with the number of drivers we had in the rodeo this year. Record number of female drivers in the rodeo this year.
Oh, that's cool.
Record number of just participants is what I heard as well that are walking the hall. It's been way busier than I expected.
There's got to be like over 1,000 people here.
That's what they said. I think 1,300 was number.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. So that's been great. And then the breakout sessions are always super informative with everything that's constantly changing in the landscape of concrete. I was at a breakout session the other day. You don't read these legislations that come out of Congress. You hear Inflation Reduction Act and you're like, okay, well, that's going to be something to do with finances, but really there's $4 billion allocated to buy green programs for state and federal agencies. Well, concrete's one of the best sustainable materials out there. So, a lot of that money is going to go to benchmarking the products and figuring out ways to lower that carbon load, and how that money can get to the suppliers to help those benchmarking things.
Yeah, I'm excited. We're actually going to have Ben Grimsley on from Lithco in a future episode, a full-length episode, and he's going to go into what they're looking at for sustainability, which is interesting because part of that is a culture change, with the construction world and the concrete world, to say, like, we can be drivers of it, and it doesn't have to impact you as much as people like to think.
No, and I'm blessed to be at a company that's on the forefront of the sustainability thing. We just finished a project with Lithco and Walter P. Moore called the Pearl. It's a Wake Forest atrium learning hospital there in downtown Charlotte. And Walter P. Moore wrote a specification that allowed us, because they challenged us to lower GWP by 25 to 30%. And we were able to hit those targets with their specification using really high fly ash, 40% ash mixes in their footings, and shear walls were scheduled to allow for 56-day mixes. And then taking a hard look at what we need to get a high early mix that still hits 7,000 PSI that can keep up with the schedule and as best we can.
It's all about the schedule.
There was definitely conversations once you go, well, I need this carbon goal. Well, and then the contractor goes, well, you want this schedule goal too. And those are opposing goals. So what's the best blend to make everybody happy?
When what the owner was at the table with that discussion as well, just to say yes or no?
I was left out of those discussions because as a producer, I'm just like, here's what is possible. It's always like they say, it's the art of the possible. Like, this is the best we can do. This is here's the best we can do on sustainability, and you get a 3-day break. Or we don't meet the goal and you can get your 1 or 2 day breaks. So here's our best option. And that's where like a Ben Grimsley will come in and take it to to the engineer and the owners
Gotcha.
and sit down and value engineer the product the best they can to figure it out. Or maybe they can make up schedule at other places than the concrete. But that's why Ben has a whole field. it's a whole thing.
Well, I mean, we look forward to talking to him in the future, but we were happy to have you now. So thank you so much for coming on the Add 10 Gallons Concrete podcast.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I really enjoyed it.